She thought she would marry a handicapped billionaire, but what happened at the wedding left her. Hi, my beautiful family. I have missed you all. Thank you so for sticking around with me. I truly appreciate your love and support. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The satin straps of the wedding dress dug into her shoulders, though it fit perfectly. Not a single wrinkle, not a single flaw. On the outside, she looked like a woman walking into a dream, but inside, Lila felt like a fraud. She stared at herself in the ornate mirror of the bridal suite, her hands clasped so tightly around the bouquet that the stems were bruising. "I look like someone who belongs here," she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like her own. She turned to her best friend, Imani, who was fussing with her veil. "Tell me again why I'm doing this," Lila said, half joking, half praying for an answer that would calm her stomach. Imani paused. "Because you said he was kind, and because you've been running on fumes for 2 years, and because maybe, just maybe, this could be love." Lila smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She thought back to the first message. She hadn't meant to swipe right on anyone. She'd joined the app to help a friend test its features. But there he was, James Thorne, age 34, CEO, in a wheelchair. Profile quote, "Still faster than your ex." She laughed when she read it. Then she replied, "1 coffee turned into 5. 5 turned into midnight talks and slow dinners where he didn't ask her to perform, to impress, to seduce. He just listened. And that was rare. Still, she had to admit it. She didn't love him, not in the way the movies promised. Not yet. But he made her feel safe, and after 2 years of being evicted, lied to, and left on red, safety was a kind of miracle. Across the estate, James Thorne sat in his chair facing the open window, the morning light casting lines across his sharply tailored navy suit. He hated the way the tux framed his shoulders. He hated the silence more. Theo, his lifelong friend and best man, leaned against the wall behind him. "You look tense," Theo said. James scoffed. "You think? She's here. That's all that matters." James didn't reply. He was still thinking about the moment she said yes, not the proposal, the yes to the coffee shop, the dinner, the 3rd date. Every yes, small and soft. He had spent most of his adult life building things, companies, systems, iron walls around his heart, because women either looked through him or through him, as if the chair defined the man. But Lila hadn't flinched. Still, there was a shadow behind her eyes sometimes, something unsaid. He didn't blame her. He wasn't sure she was marrying him out of love, and that scared him, because somewhere along the way he had fallen. Lila stood by the full-length window of the bridal suite, watching the guests begin to gather. Elegant chairs, white roses, everything pristine. She remembered the moment James told her, "This chair isn't who I am, but it's what I live in. If you stay, don't pretend it's invisible, just see it, and see me anyway." She had nodded, but she still didn't know if she could carry the weight of it, all of it. And what about her? She hadn't told him the truth about her past, about the eviction, the debt collectors, the nights she'd slept in her car. What would he think if he knew? Would he still love her? Was this even love, or just survival in a wedding dress? Back in the groom's suite, James wheeled himself over to the small black box on the dresser. He opened it. Inside was a letter, handwritten, no ring, just words. He had written it at 3:12 a.m. the night before, hands shaking. "If you're standing at the altar because you feel safe, I'll understand. But I want you to walk away if you're not in love, because I'm in love, and I've lost too much already to gamble again. So if you read this and you feel even 1 ounce of doubt, please don't come down that aisle. Just leave me this letter, and I'll never ask you why." He closed the box and handed it to Theo. "Give this to her before the ceremony," he said quietly. Theo hesitated. "You sure?" James nodded once. "Let her choose." Somewhere in a quiet room lined with mirrors and flowers, Leah was fixing her veil. Somewhere across the courtyard, James was ready to break his own heart if it meant protecting hers, and in 20 minutes they would both learn what love by choice truly meant. If you had to choose between emotional safety and real love, Which would you pick and why? Share your truth in the comments. Someone out there might need your words. 10 minutes before the ceremony, Theo knocked on the bridal suite door. Leah turned, startled to see him. He looked nervous, almost apologetic. "He asked me to give you this," Theo said, handing her the small black box, "before you walk down the aisle." Leah took it slowly. "What is it?" He said. "You'd understand." Theo left before she could ask more. Leah sat down in front of the mirror, the weight of her veil heavier than ever. She opened the box. She read, and her world tilted. "Leah, if you're reading this, it means you showed up, and that alone means more to me than I know how to explain. But before you walk toward me, before we speak our vows, I need you to know something. I love you, and I didn't mean for it to happen, but I do. I love the way you breathe through panic. I love how you laugh with your whole face. I love that you see the man, not the chair. Or at least, I thought you did. But lately I've seen the fear in your eyes, the hesitation, the questions you don't ask. And I want to give you permission to not answer them now. If you're walking toward me because you feel safe, I'll still marry you. But if you're walking toward me because you can't imagine not loving me, then I'll marry you with everything I have. But if there's doubt, please don't come. Leave this letter on the table. I'll understand, and I'll love you anyway." She reread it 3 times. Tears blurred the ink. The music began to play outside. Guests rose. James waited at the altar, heart pounding. Theo stood beside him, barely breathing. And then, there she was, Lila, in white. But her eyes weren't tearful from joy. They were terrified. She held something in her hands. James saw it instantly. The letter, still folded, still with her, not left behind. She reached the front. They stood face to face. He whispered, "You didn't leave it." She shook her head. "I couldn't." Silence. "Is that a yes or a no?" he asked quietly. Lila swallowed and said, "It's a not yet." A murmur rippled through the guests. Was this a runaway bride? A public humiliation? But Lila didn't run, and James didn't flinch. He took her hand gently, steadied her fingers. "Do you want to talk?" he asked. "Now," she whispered. "In front of everyone," he said. "Or we can go somewhere quiet. This day is yours too." She looked around at the expectant faces, and for once in her life, she chose truth over performance. "Let's talk," she said, and just like that, they turned away from the altar. Together. 20 minutes later, they sat alone in the garden behind the venue. Just the two of them. The ceremony forgotten. The guests eating canapes and whispering. Lila was barefoot now, her heels discarded in the grass, her veil folded on a bench. "I didn't leave the letter," she said slowly, "because I didn't want to lie to you." He watched her. "I care about you more than I've ever cared about anyone," she continued. "But I came here today not because I loved you, but because I thought I'd be safe with you." He looked down. She reached for his hand. "But then I read your letter, and I realized you've given me something I never gave myself." "What's that?" he asked. "A choice." James looked at her like he was seeing her again for the first time. "And if you had that choice now?" he asked. "I'd choose you," she said. "But not like this. Not with vows I don't fully mean. Not under pressure. I want the next time I walk toward you to be with my heart wide open." Silence fell. But it was warm now, heavy with meaning, not fear. He nodded. "Then I'll wait," he said. She smiled. "Will you still feed me pancakes on Sundays while we figure it out?" He chuckled. That was always part of the plan. Back inside the venue, guests were murmuring, but neither of them cared. In a quiet garden beneath an unfinished altar, 2 people who were about to marry for the wrong reasons had just begun to fall in love for the right ones. Have you ever told the truth, only to regret how vulnerable it made you feel afterward? Did it help or hurt? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. The next day felt empty. Empty. There was no reception, no honeymoon, just silence. Lila stood in the kitchen of her small apartment, stirring a mug of instant coffee she didn't want to drink. Her wedding dress was folded on the couch, veil still stuffed in the bag from the hotel. She had walked away from the altar with him, but now she felt like she was suspended in mid-air, not married, but not exactly single, not in love, but not without it, somewhere in between. She stared at her phone. No messages from James, none from his assistant or Theo, nothing, and that nothing stung more than any argument could have. Across the city, James sat in his office, staring at the muted phone screen. His inbox was a battlefield of curiosity, scandal and silence. Subject: was she a runaway bride? Subject: Thorne wedding postponed. Should we update board announcements? Subject: People Mag wants a quote. He closed the laptop, rubbed his temples. He hadn't messaged her since yesterday, because he didn't know what to say. How do you follow up with a woman who just left you at the altar gracefully? He wasn't angry, he was just afraid. Afraid that what they'd started in the garden wasn't real, that her not yet would turn into a quiet no once the noise died down. That night, Lila wrote out a message. Hey, I've been thinking about everything. I hope I didn't ruin it. I still want to talk. If that's something you want too. She stared at it, then deleted it, then rewrote it. Do you still want to talk? Deleted again, typed again, then nothing. She tossed her phone on the floor, face burning with shame. You're the one who walked away, remember? James wheeled into his private gym, working out like he was punishing himself. The resistance bands pulled hard against his chest. Every rep a question. Did she ever love you? Was it just the safety net? Would she still choose you now without the money? He didn't have the answers. He didn't know if she was trying to protect him or escape him. Later that week, Theo dropped by unannounced. He tossed a bag of takeout on the kitchen counter. Still brooding? James grunted. Still judging? No, just checking, because I think you're letting something real die because of your pride. James looked up sharply. I gave her the choice, he snapped. She took it. Yeah, Theo said, and then she didn't leave. You both stood in front of 200 people and admitted the truth. James didn't reply. Theo leaned in. So why are you punishing her for being honest with you? At the laundromat, Lila folded towels while an elderly woman beside her watched. You okay, sweetheart? The woman asked. Lila paused, smiled weakly. Just adjusting. To what? Not being a bride? The woman chuckled. Trust me, the wedding is nothing. Love happens in kitchens, on couches, in messy rooms. If you're waiting for fairy tale clarity, you'll miss the real thing. Lila stared at her. Those words, they felt like James. That night, James stared at her contact name. He typed, I miss you. Deleted. Typed again. Do you want to start over? Not the marriage. Just us. His finger hovered over send. He tapped it. The message went through. Then, nothing. He waited. 1 minute, 3, 10, still no reply. He tossed the phone aside and turned off the lamp. On opposite sides of the same city, two people sat in dimly lit rooms, both too afraid of saying the wrong thing to say anything at all. Lila was midway through applying for a temp job when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something in her chest said pick up. Hello, Miss Hart? A voice asked. This is Tasha from New Dawn Outreach. Lila blinked. Yes, we're organizing a last-minute speaking panel for our adaptive tech fundraiser tomorrow evening, and your name came up. My name? Yes. Mr. Thorne recommended you personally. Lila sat up straighter. Wait, James? Yes. He thought your story could inspire our younger clients. Would you be willing to join the panel? A beat passed. I guess? Wonderful. He'll be speaking too. Lila's heart stuttered. Of course he would. The next evening, the city skyline glittered behind the windows of the New Dawn event space. The room buzzed with warmth, community, and quiet reverence, a far cry from the wedding chaos just days before. Lila stood near the refreshments table, wearing a simple black dress and trying to keep her knees from shaking. Then she saw him, across the room, James, in a navy suit, speaking with an older couple and a child in a wheelchair. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a man who'd stopped waiting to be understood and had started simply being himself. And when he turned and saw her, his smile didn't falter, not even for a second. Before the panel started, they found themselves alone behind the curtains. Hi, he said softly. Hi, she replied, suddenly aware of every heartbeat in her body. Thanks for coming, he added. You recommended me. I didn't know if you'd say yes. She looked down, then back at him. I didn't know if I wanted to see you again. And now, he asked. I'm glad I did. A pause. The silence wasn't awkward this time. It was full of things neither knew how to say yet. When it was Lila's turn to speak, she stepped up to the microphone. A few dozen faces watched her. She hadn't prepared anything. I thought I'd be married right now, she began. Soft chuckles from the crowd. But instead, I'm here talking to strangers about why I said not yet. James looked up from the corner of the stage. Lila's voice cracked slightly. I thought love was something you found when things got easy, when you felt safe. But real love, I'm learning, doesn't start where safety does. It starts where truth does. She looked over at him. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pause at the altar and say, I want more than safety. I want something real. The room was still, then applause, but she didn't hear it. All she could hear was her heart saying, go to him. After the panel, James found her near the exit. Did you mean all of that? He asked, voice low. She turned to him, tears swimming behind her lashes. I meant every word. He stepped closer. Then tell me what you want. Right now. Just us. No stage. No guests. She hesitated, then said, I want to fall in love with you without the pressure, without the ceremony. Just us. Raw and slow. He looked like she'd knocked the air from his lungs. Then he whispered, they didn't go home together. They didn't kiss. They just walked through quiet streets, side by side, close enough to brush shoulders. Did you really write that letter the night before the wedding? She asked. It took me an hour to get the courage. She smiled. I read it 6 times, still wish I'd had the courage to leave it behind. But you didn't, he said gently. And maybe that's what made this real. They stood outside her apartment building, under the amber glow of a street lamp. Not touching, not rushing, just there, together. 2 people who had been broken wide open, finally finding the courage to begin again. 3 days after the fundraiser, Lila received a voice note from James. I made pancakes, too many for one, no pressure. She laughed softly. Her chest ached in that way it does when something's healing. When she arrived at his place, no makeup, hair tied up, he was already waiting at the door, flipping pancakes and playing jazz on low volume. No suits, no wheelchair talk, just James. And for the first time, Lila didn't feel like a guest. She felt like home. They ate in silence for a while, soft morning light pouring through the kitchen window. James broke it first. Can I ask you something? Lila nodded. Why did you say yes to me in the first place? She hesitated. I don't know if I can answer that without sounding terrible. I want the real version, he said, even if it hurts. So she told him. I was drowning, she said, voice quiet. I'd lost my job. I was working double shifts, living out of a friend's spare room. I didn't believe in love anymore. I barely believed in myself. He listened, not interrupting. You weren't just a guy on an app, James. You were stability, kindness. You were the first person who looked at me like I was more than what I'd lost. She swallowed. And when you asked me to marry you, I didn't know if I loved you yet, but I wanted to. And I was tired of waiting for fairy tales. I thought maybe choosing safety was close enough. Tears welled in her eyes. But when I read your letter, I realized you weren't choosing safety. You were choosing me. James leaned back in his chair. He looked away for a moment, toward the window. My accident wasn't recent, he said. Happened when I was 24, skiing in Switzerland. My brother dared me to take one more run. Lila waited. There was no one else on the slope. I lost control, hit a tree. He tapped his thigh lightly. This was instant. Lila's eyes softened. I'm so sorry. I'm not, he said. Not anymore. She looked at him, surprised. I spent 5 years trying to fix something that wasn't broken. My legs didn't fail me. I did. I let it define me, let it harden me, until one day I realized I wasn't broken because I couldn't walk. He paused. I was broken because I stopped letting anyone see the parts of me that still could feel. They sat across from each other, pancakes half-eaten, hearts wide open. No one ever told me I was allowed to choose love after I'd fallen, Lila whispered. James tilted his head. You just did. Before she left that day, he handed her a small envelope. I rewrote the letter, he said. You don't have to. I want to, he replied, because I don't need you to walk toward me anymore. I just want you to walk with me." Lila opened the envelope once she got home. Inside, "Lila, if you're reading this, it means you came back, not to a wedding, not to a vow, to me. I won't ask for a ceremony this time, only that you stay long enough to see the love in my silence, in my mornings, in the ordinary things. If you ever do walk toward me again, I hope it's not because you need saving, but because you know now that you've already been found." She folded the letter against her chest, tears falling freely now, not from grief, but from relief, because for the first time, love didn't feel like a performance. It felt like permission to be known, to be flawed, to be chosen anyway. The rain came unannounced. Lila stood under James's awning, soaked but smiling. She hadn't told him she was coming. When he opened the door, his eyebrows lifted. "You always bring storms?" She shrugged. "Only when I miss your pancakes." He stepped aside. "Then we better make some." He flipped the batter while she danced barefoot across the kitchen tile, humming an old R&B song and laughing when she got the lyrics wrong. James watched her, his heart softer than it had been in years. "Want to know something?" he asked. She twirled around. "Always. I used to dream about what a Sunday like this might feel like." Lila paused. "Does it match the dream?" He smiled. "No, it's better." After breakfast, they curled up on the couch under a warm blanket. A movie played, but neither was watching it. Lila's head rested on his shoulder. She could hear the calm, even rhythm of his breathing. "Do you still think about that day?" she asked. "The wedding?" She nodded. "Sometimes," he said, "but not with regret, just gratitude." She blinked. "Gratitude. I think that moment gave us this one." She looked up at him, tears welling. "You're not afraid anymore, are you?" "I'm terrified," he said with a small laugh. "But this time I don't want to run. I want to stay afraid with you." They stayed on the couch all afternoon, telling stories from childhood, playing two truths and a lie, laughing until they couldn't breathe when James admitted he once cried during a toothpaste commercial. It was emotional, he protested. The polar bear smiled. Lila clutched her sides, her face glowing. There was no pressure here, no cameras, no expectations, only a kind of love that felt like exhale. That night, under fairy lights on his balcony, James turned to her. "I want to ask you something." She looked up. His voice was gentle, steady, not a proposal, just a question. "Okay. Would you let me love you without a timeline?" Lila's throat tightened. "Would you let me love you," she whispered, "without proving anything first?" He smiled, and this time it reached every corner of his face. "I think we just did." They didn't kiss under the stars. They didn't plan their future. They just leaned into each other, safe, seen, unrushed. For the first time in both their lives, love wasn't loud. It was steady, and that was enough. It was supposed to be a normal morning. Lila walked into the corner store to grab almond milk and a newspaper. But there it was, right on the rack. James Thorne, bachelor billionaire, back on the market. A photo from the fundraiser, him speaking on stage, radiant and confident. Alone. The caption below chilled her. Sources confirm the postponed wedding is likely permanent, though Thorne remains close with the bride-to-be, Lila Hart, in a supportive friendship. Her throat went dry. Supportive friendship. She didn't call. She didn't text. She showed up. James opened the door, half dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly just out of bed. "Hey, did you see it?" she snapped. His face fell. "What?" She tossed the magazine at him. He caught it mid-air, read, then sighed. "Lila, supportive friendship," she repeated, voice shaking. "Is that what I am to you now? I didn't write that, but you didn't stop it either." She paced his living room, heart racing. "I stood up there at that fundraiser and told the world I wasn't ashamed of you, of us. I opened my heart, and now you're letting people reduce it to PR spin?" "It's just the media," he said. "It's noise." "No," she said. "It's silence. It's your silence." James stiffened. "I've been careful, Lila. You don't know what it's like to be watched, judged, twisted. I do now." He didn't respond. She swallowed hard. "Do you love me, James?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He looked at her, but said nothing, and that was the worst answer of all. She grabbed her coat. He stepped forward. "Don't go." She shook her head. I can't keep proving I'm here for you when you're still afraid to say what you feel. Lila, I don't. Her voice cracked. I deserve to be loved out loud. And with that she walked out, leaving only the magazine on the coffee table, still open, still whispering everything he didn't say. James sat in the quiet long after she left. Her question still echoed, "Do you love me?" Why couldn't he say it? He did. Of course he did. But saying it out loud made it real, made it something that could be taken, lost. He wheeled over to the mirror, stared at the man looking back, and whispered, "You always ruin it when it's real." Back in her apartment, Lila sat on the floor, still in her coat, crying into her hands. "I gave him everything," she whispered to the silence, but the silence gave nothing back, just like he had, and for the first time since the non-wedding, she felt truly achingly alone. One question, one silence, one shattered bond. They had almost made it through the fire, but sometimes the past doesn't let go until you've lost what you needed most. James hadn't slept. The magazine still lay on the coffee table, untouched since Lila left. He replayed the moment again and again, and again. Her voice, her question, his silence, it echoed louder than any answer he could have given. And now, she was gone, and it was his fault. Lila sat on her counter with a bowl of cereal she wasn't eating. The city buzzed outside, cars passed, children laughed in the distance, but inside it was still, still and quiet in the way that hurts. She checked her phone, nothing, no message, no call, not even a read receipt on the last one she sent 4 days ago. "I wish you had just told me." James opened a blank email, typed, deleted, typed again. This time he didn't delete. "Lila, you asked me if I loved you, and I said nothing. Not because I didn't feel it, but because I felt it too much. Because saying it means risking losing it, and I've lost too much already. But now I realize I lost you anyway, and silence is a coward's way of pretending it doesn't hurt. So here it is. I love you. I love you when I wake up and you're not there. I love you when I think about how your laugh fills a room. I love you even though I was too afraid to say it when it mattered most. I don't know what happens next. I just hope this isn't the last page. James." He hit send, then closed the laptop, unsure if hope would come back with a reply or die in the waiting. Lila heard the chime at 11:02 p.m. She almost didn't check it. Then she saw his name. She opened it, read it once, then again and again. Tears ran freely down her face, but they weren't angry tears. They weren't hopeless. They were soft, warm, because he had finally said it. Not perfectly, but honestly. She didn't respond by text. Instead, the next morning she stood at his door. He opened it, eyes wide with disbelief. "You're here," he said, breathless. "I got your message." Silence. Then, "Why didn't you reply?" She looked at him. "I didn't want to write back," she said. "I wanted to look you in the eye when I said this." She stepped closer. "I love you too." It wasn't passionate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow. They moved into each other like puzzle pieces finally aligning. No fireworks, just safety and forgiveness, and something that felt like starting again without starting over. Sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't written in grand gestures or wedding vows. They're written in broken silences and the choice to still show up, even after the fall. Spring had returned to the city. Warmth hung in the air, sunlight lingered longer, and the air smelled like beginnings. In a cozy loft filled with plants, soft blankets, and a half-built bookshelf, Lila and James were dancing barefoot in the kitchen, to no music, her arms around his neck, his hands resting lightly on her waist. They weren't practicing for anything. No choreographer, no guests, no first dance, just them, alive, still choosing. A crumpled, once tear-stained letter was pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pancake. James's final email. Lila read it every now and then, not because she doubted him, but because it reminded her of who they used to be and how far they had come. One quiet evening, they sat on the balcony, wrapped in a single oversized hoodie, watching the sun sink behind the city. "I have a question," James said. Lila turned. "I'm listening." "I don't want to do a wedding," he said. Not like before, not with suits and seating charts and floral budgets. She smiled. Me neither. I want to walk into a room with people we love, look you in the eyes and say what we mean. Okay, and I want to do it in jeans. She laughed. Deal. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. No speech, no kneeling, just this. Will you walk with me for the rest of the way? She reached for the ring, eyes glistening. Yes, they called it a celebration of choice. It wasn't big, just Theo, Imani, a few close friends, and a small garden with paper lanterns swaying in the breeze. There were no vows written on note cards, no pastor, no pianist, just James and Lila, sitting across from each other, holding hands, and when it was time to speak, Lila said, "The first time I almost married you, it was for safety. This time, it's for freedom, to be fully myself, and to love you as you are, with joy, not obligation." James smiled, then said, "You once walked away from me so we could walk back to each other better. You taught me that love doesn't wait at altars. It waits in the quiet, in the brave choice to stay when things get real." They sealed it not with a kiss, but with a forehead press. Gentle, sacred, earned. Back at home that night, Lila took out the first wedding dress, the one she never wore down the aisle. She held it in her arms like a memory. James came behind her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm just glad I never wore this for the wrong version of us." Then she folded it gently, packed it away. They didn't need it. They had something better, truth. Before bed, James opened the drawer of his nightstand and pulled out the original letter, the one he gave her on their almost wedding day, the one that changed everything. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. He'd added one final line at the bottom. "You never left it on the table, and because of that, we never had to walk alone again." She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. "You really love me," she said. He smiled. "I really, really do." Not because they were flawless, not because it was easy, but because they chose each other again and again. Love didn't save them. They saved love, by making space for it, by telling the truth, by staying when it got hard. And in the end, it wasn't the wedding that made it real. It was the walk back, together. Thanks for staying with us till the end. If this story touched you, the next one will sweep you off your feet. It's even more thrilling and full of surprises you won't want to miss. Tap the like button and hit subscribe now so you're the first to catch our next romance tale.